Peru.
Verona,
Wow.
Italy, Peru, Sweden. Awesome. Nice that everyone's from everywhere. Hey, Julie. Nice to see you again.
Hey.
Hi. All right. So I am going to kill the music. I know we're all very excited about the music. Good afternoon or good morning, depends on where are you joining us from. If we haven't met before, my name is Ana Maria. I'm saying this a lot this week in all of the sessions. I am leading the community project here at Butter, and welcome to the Butter Bootcamp. It's our very first Butter Bootcamp, and we are shifting a bit the focus from facilitation in general to facilitation in Butter and our features and all of the tips and tricks. And this time they're not even coming from us, they're coming from our super users. So it's very exciting to have them show us around the tool. Today's session is focusing on our newest feature, I guess, newest big feature, the agenda planner or session planner. And we're going to tackle everything there is related to the preparation prior to the session. So what happens before we even welcome the participants in the room. Now, before we kick it off, I do want to mention that the session is being recorded. We would love to see your faces, your reactions, your smiles on the screen. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, pick a cute avatar and let it do the talking for you and use the reactions to let us know how you feel. And I'm super happy to introduce our host today, Daniel, with a focus of information architecture and design research. Fancy. Daniel has spent the last 20 years designing services, experiences, and complex software while empowering product and creative teams to deliver user-centered design projects. Daniel, thank you so much for hosting us today and sharing all your tips and tricks. Over to you.
Thanks, Ana Maria. Thanks, Cheska, for inviting me. So, folks, today is going to be a very relaxed and hands-on session. My objective is for you folks to get out of this hour with really knowing how to use the session planner feature in Butter, but also to think about the basics of planning, right? Before starting, just going to ask you folks quickly how comfortable you are using this agenda planner, right? So what's your initial reactions about this feature, right? So can you rate for me 1 to 10? How does you feel about this, right? During the session, we're going to be using surveys. We're going to be using the chat. So hold on. And awesome. I have 8, 10, just a little bit more. As soon as you vote, you can see the results as well. And if you want to add any extra comment, go on the chat. I'm going to vote myself so I can see the results. Yeah, so a lot of, we have 17 out of 22, a lot of new people here. Some already experts on the feature, right? Which is great. So we have a very balanced room. So let's start then, right? So folks, I'm using this tool for a few weeks already, but I'm very familiar with other tools that allow you to plan sessions ahead of time, right? And what I want to share with you folks, it's about how you make the best out of the feature, but also how to have the building blocks for planning interactive workshops. And to start, let's have a warm-up, right? It's not a workshop without a warm-up. So I want you guys to think about the scenario. The Design Museum in London hired you to facilitate a workshop about creativity and collaboration. And you have unlimited budget. So you can bring 3 amazing guests. Any part of the world, it doesn't matter, dead or alive, you have unlimited budget and you have time travel. So tell me on the chat, which are the 3 people you're bringing in for your workshop, right? So mine is Mick Jagger, Freud, and what's the name? And Paul McCartney. So tell me, go on the chat and tell me yours. you can get any design, anyone you want. It's about creativity and collaboration. I find Paul McCartney very interesting personality in work collaboration after watching the Beatles documentary. I see Almo, David Attenborough, Alex Ferguson, and Michael Jackson. Wow, it would be an amazing workshop. Who else? Come on, folks. Several users are typing. Gandhi and Shakira. Wow. Eckhart Tolle, Michelle Obama, and Joan d'Arc. Wow, that would be a really philosophical one. Elon Musk, grandchildren. David Bowie, Frida Kahlo, and Michael K. Williams. Buena Vista Social Club, Ed Lizard, and I can't think of a third. Miro, the artist, David Bowie, and Prince. Wow, Benoit, that's a really nice. Right, so it's amazing what we can have with unlimited budget, right? So thanks a lot for your participation on the silly warm-up, right? So warm-ups, they have meaning for you when you're planning a workshop, right? It helps you to do a lot of stuff, and I'm going to touch on that later, and I'm going to explain why I always start with a warm-up. So the first section of a workshop, and if you have using Butter for the first time, you can tap on the agenda item in your top left, and you can see the agenda, right? You're going to move for the second part, which is planning and facilitation, why it matters, right? Planning, it's a word that is used in many different contexts. So I want you folks to think about that, right? But before talking about planning, I want to share something about me. I think Anna told you folks that I'm coming from the design background, so I do a lot of workshops and stuff for long, I think 4 years already, right? But I want to say a little bit more about me, right? So I'm a barbecue connoisseur. I love barbecue. I love to be around the barbecue and doing a lot of stuff. Butter, I like the tool, not only the tool, but the food as well. So like butter saves lives, right? And I really like, how can I say it? I like memes a lot. I had a flashcard with a video here. It didn't load, but it was a meme with my face. That's fine. I failed on that. That's okay. But I want to know a little bit about you as a facilitator, right? So let's say your team needs a workshop. What's your role on that? I want to go to the survey again, right? This is a multiple choice, so you can select more than one. If there's a workshop coming next, what's your role? Are you a facilitator, or you're normally the person asking? You do the planning and the facilitation, or you're just the one attending the workshop and watching? Go on the survey and tell me about your role in workshops. I can see we have a nice balance between people who do the planning and the facilitation, right? Some people are just the sponsors here, which is great. Important element in this work. Just waiting a few seconds more to have everyone voting. Right. So we have a really balanced audience here. So a lot of you folks do the facilitation and the planning, and that comes with a lot of conflict. Sometimes it's very hard when you're doing both, right? It's easy when you just do the facilitation, because the planning, it's an activity that it touches on who is going to your workshop, what's the purpose, who's going to be available. There's a lot of stuff around that. So for the session, we're going to be touching on the experience of the session, right? How you plan the details on the session. And for that, I have another question for you folks, is when you planning workshops, what is your biggest challenge? What normally happens when you're doing this work, if you do this work, right? Go back on the survey and you can answer me. If you're not comfortable with the survey, you can answer on the chat as well. designing engagement. Engagement is a recurrent theme, considering that we are always living on screens for about 2 years, right? It's not easy. Our life was way easier in big rooms, whiteboards, people in 3 dimensions, right? Finding the right exercises, inspirations, thinking of the right activities, thinking about the preparation. When the problem and outcome are not clear, always optimistic with time. That's my case as well. I always think that we have enough time and we never have. So engagement is a recurrent theme here, as you say, visuals, collaboration, right? So there's a lot here. We have 9 out of 22. Let me wait just a few seconds more. Right. So a lot about tool set as well, and focus and timing activities. There's a lot. It's a very complex problem. Sometimes we think that planning a workshop is an easy task, but it's not, right? So I'm gonna finish the poll so we can move next. So my idea, folks, is to show how can we address some of those pain points using the right tooling and the right process for planning, right? But there's no right answer for this. This is a design activity, so there are many ways. And I will ask you folks to jump in and give me your perspectives as well, right? So planning is so important, and normally the rule we do internally is that for each hour of workshop session, you might have 4 hours of planning, right? Which is it's not an exact science, but it works a lot, right? Normally you have a lot to prepare in terms of materials, in terms of getting people together and finding the basics for you to discuss even with the sponsor of the workshops. So I'm going to share with you folks what I normally do, right? And my tips, which I learned with amazing people in the facilitation community. So I'm going to call the session Planning 101, Popular Methods. So the idea here, folks, is just giving you folks some grounding ideas about this, right? So let's get together, right? The first thing, and I think it happens with everyone, including you in the room, is that we always have 3 questions when you join a workshop or a meeting. Why I'm here is the first one. What we're going to be doing and how we'll be doing this, right? Those are silly and basic questions, but this is normal human behavior. We always join sessions like this and even asking, should I be here? Right? What's in for me, right? So as a facilitator, your goal is to support how to answer those questions with your plan and supporting other co-creators. So it's a lot, right? So how can we unpack this problem? So I think I'm normally think about 3 things: structure, humanity, and flow, right? And for structure, I learned with Alison Cord, which is a British facilitator, about this concept of missing middle. I'm not sure if you have heard about this. If you have, use the reaction button, give me a thumbs up, right? But Alison is amazing, and she talks about this idea of missing middle, right? Sometimes you're playing a double role. You're doing the supporting the team to define the workshop purpose, even what happens after the workshop. But there's a moment you need to shift in your head and you're acting as a facilitator. For the outcome of the session to be productive and everyone to be happy, you need to be focused on what we call the missing middle, right? And the missing middle is the substance of the workshop. It's is the activities you're designing, is the flow of time, is how people will contribute, right? And a lot of time people just forget that you're meeting with strange people you never see before, right? So I add another thing on structure, which I think is humanity actually, which I call the welcoming acts and wrapping up acts, right? So for me, is a golden rule that you use the warm up not just as to receive people and say you're welcome here and your contribution is expected, but to set up the grounding rules for engagement and also to give people some time to get used to the technology, like the chat and using surveys. At this point of this workshop, you use the survey, you use the chat, you use reaction, and you can do that in any tool, but the warm-up, it's important for that as well, right? And the wrap-up is a time that you designed for giving extra context for people after they leave the workshop, right? It's the outcomes, it's the write-up. So normally it's part of your work as a facilitator to make sure the wrap-up is excellent as well, right? But now let's talk about the missing middle, right? And what is the missing middle? I think as a facilitator, this is a bit cliche, right? We are wired in design language. So you observe a design activity like Crazy 8, whatever, you can identify if you're diverging, if you're converging, right? But that's normal for us, but perhaps for the participants is not. So a lot about your planning, it's about thinking when to converge and diverge over time in your journey, right? The other cliche is alone together, right? We should be mindful that some people, they have different ways of working, so we need to design that accordingly. So some people will be enjoying 10 minutes alone and writing, others will need to have this kind of fire, someone to talk with in breakout rooms. So it's part of your uh, objective as a planner to balance alone and time together, right? So those are the two core basics you're going to be thinking when designing the outline for your session. But let's talk about flow structures, right? So I use two different tools, right? I call them flow structures, and this is from the guys from Cowspilot, this first one, which is called set, hold, and land. So every session you're going to be planning, it's an arc. It's like a story you're creating, right? So on the Cowspilot language, they talk about setting the stage or setting the boundaries, setting the scene, holding space for the conversation, holding the context, or holding ways of participation, and landing in conclusions, landing in the next steps. So this is a normal flow you can use for designing your sessions, right? The second flow model or technique you can use when you're designing your sessions is thinking about the 4C framework from the guys at AG Smart, which is quite helpful. And if you are designing, you might recognize this in many activities, right? Which is basically collect, choose, create, and commit, right? So you collect information from different sources, you collect information from different people, then you choose where to act. So perhaps there will be a prioritization exercise here. And then you create something new and you commit to action. That could be after the workshop or during the workshop. So those are normal the flows you might be using in the session to make sure that your plan is allowing people to collaborate and to feel engaged in the session as well, right? We're gonna try this, right? So I'm gonna stop now. If you folks have any questions about this section, please write on the chat. But my idea now is for us to have the hands-on part of this workshop, right? So this time we have about 25 minutes for the hands-on part, and there's a little prep, and that's the next step for us, right? If you have any questions, if you want to interrupt me, that's your time. You can raise your hand using the Q button on on the Butter interface. So if you're shy, you can write on the chat, right? If I'm not hearing from you folks in the next 10 seconds, I will just proceed because you guys are going to have fun in the next section. Hello, Mika. Go on.
Hi, I have a question about the flows that you introduced. Which is your favorite to use, and why is it your favorite?
So it's funny because sometimes you have sessions that are more about learning, right? In some sessions, they are more about creating something new. The 4C framework is quite useful when it's a design activity, right? And the Cowspilot, it's more for sessions where the content is about immersion. It's more slow pace, right? I really like the 4C framework. It helps me a lot, and it helps me to connect different design activities. So it's something that I really enjoy using. Eleno. Eleno, I think he gave up.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you listen? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Um, I have a doubt that sometimes I'm planning and I plan for a meeting that I will facilitate that has 1 hour, and I took around 3 hours to plan it. It has a rule for how it's much time to plan a session, or it doesn't have a rule, or if you are over planning your session.
Yeah, that's an amazing question, Elena. Up to today, I have the habit of over planning. I'm always planning until the session starts, right? But my tip for you is that block time, dude. Block time and get a limit, because it always can get better, but there's a moment you have to ship it, right? And it's a habit for all facilitators to do that. And but for workshops, I think the rule is for each hour you plan for 4 hours. It's a good golden rule. Some people they have different, but for meetings, I do the same meeting every month. I have the benefit of having amazing co-facilitators. So now, before was think about 3 hours for every month. Now it's just 30 minutes basically. So it gets better over time. And the session planner helps you to reuse the blocks as well, which is great, right? I have some more comments by Carolina. Carolina, go on. Carolina Montalban.
Hi.
Hi.
So I was just wondering, where can we find maybe because I've heard about Piloterna. I am also a graduate from Hyper. So where do we find these tools, these structure flows, or is it just as simple as you presented it? Just
So
following those steps.
that's a great question, Carolina. The 4C framework they have as a free PDF, so I can share the link in the end of the session, right? The AG guys. The Chaos Pilot, I found articles about them, but we can share as well, right? And honestly, I think the facilitator community is amazing at sharing design exercises, but not that much in terms of talking about frameworks. But as you as you work with design exercise and you see the framework, and I think I have a information like that as well. I look patterns, right? You can see the patterns very clearly, right? And the 4C is just that. If you just collect, choose, create, and commit, if you have that in the back of your mind, the flow is natural, right? But I would try to find some more extra materials and share with you folks as well. But I see there's no more questions. I want you folks to experience that. So that's the next part of the workshop, and I think it's going to be very helpful, right? Which is basically, I want you folks to imagine a workshop or meeting, preferably a workshop that you have done before or that you have to do, right? And what we're going to do before going to the planning specifics in the tool, we're going to design an outline, right? So I want you folks to see at the top, at the bottom left of the Butter tool, you have a notes. So if you click on notes, there'll be like a notepad for you, right? And I want you folks to spend the next minutes, the next 5 minutes, and Anna gonna put a music for us to and a timer, right? I want you folks to outline your idea for a workshop. It could be any workshop, perhaps a workshop you have done before and you want to improve. Perhaps it's something that you're planning, right? I'm going to show the example, the outline for this workshop, the original outline for this workshop. As you might see, I started with warm up and wrap up, and I just had at the idea was a planning section and an activity. You start that just with the basics, right? So I want to folks to think about put your warm up and wrap up sections, and let's design the missing middle. So use your Butter Notes tool here, or if you prefer, you can open a Google Doc, so you can even write directly on the chat. It doesn't matter. But I'm gonna ask you folks to spend the next 5 minutes doing that. And then we're gonna move for the real activity when I'm gonna walk you guys through the session planner, and you can build your own session. Or if you prefer, you can mess around with the agenda for the session you're using now, right? It's going to be very hands-on. You're going to be able to use the session planner and see how you can add the different items, right? So I'm going to let the outline on the screen, but think about the workshop. It could be something that is coming next or something that you've done before. Ana Maria, it's going to put the timer for us, 5 minutes. All right, people. It's not that easy, right? But I know some of you already have something in place, right? Don't worry. Keep your notes open. We're going to be using them soon. And if anyone wants to share anything that they learn or anything that they struggle with trying to design the outline, you can just raise your hand and talk. You can talk in the chat as well. Normally, for outlining, it's very hard to find the balance between going to the nitty-gritty details, like, oh my God, I should be using that middle board, through abstraction, right? To think about the arc, what makes sense. It's normal, right? I use sometimes even a middle board just to design the sessions to approve. But the best is just writing. Sometimes it's a bit hard, but it works really great for you to have something in place before you go to the session, right? So I share with you folks my outline, and I will now share the structure for this session we are having. So just if you go to the Butter dashboard, as I said, you have the setup, right? And Anna so smart, she created a demo planner for us. So it's a session that is not the session we have now, right? She created an empty session. So the view you have is the basic details, overview, waiting room, collaborators. We're going to be focused on agenda and toolbox here, right? So the agenda, you can experience the agenda because it's something you can tap in your top left and you can see the full agenda, right? But that's your viewer version. So for the facilitators, you have many building blocks in the agenda. So Anna is going to be adding a new block. So we're going to have a first block, which is warm-up. The warm-up block is the initial block. So we're going to recreate exactly what we have here, right? And normally you can define a time. So you can have a 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and you can even hide that from participants. Sometimes the first block is the warm-up. You don't want to put pressure on people. So normally I don't have time on the warm-up block, but let's have 10 minutes. It's great, right? And the description, it's the thing you see on the screen. So participants will see the description, right? And you can choose your colors for the blocks. So be very smart choosing colors. I normally have blocks when you have people need to do something in red to mean attention, right? And normally I have yellow ones as the warm-up and stuff, and green for content. Anna is way smarter than me. She has a different color coding strategy, right? But this is the basic. You're creating the block. You're creating the agenda block, right? The next part, which is important when you co-facilitator, right? If you have a co-facilitator, you have the facilitator notes, right? So you can give them instructions. You can say, oh, for the warm-up, we're going to use that technique, right? This is only visible if someone is invited as a co-facilitator for the session, right? So then we just finished with the blocks, right? The building blocks of creating an agenda. And now we're going to work with the tools. Tools are all the things you can have in your session, right? I think you might notice that at the beginning, I used a poll. I use a flashcard in the warm-up to show the Mick Jagger and the question, right? And you can have many other stuff as well. You can have Moodle, you can have Miro, you can have Google Slides, right? You can have a YouTube video. So there's a plethora of things you can use in your designing your blocks, right? For the facilitator, folks, is that if you have that in place, if it's in your toolbox and you drop in the agenda item, you just tap on it and it just happens. You don't need to do that, anything else. It's just magic because it's already set up for you in your toolbox. So if you click, the poll will just open, right? So it's easy for you, and it's easy for you as well when you're facilitating alone, right? So Anna is creating a poll. I love the survey functionality because there's many different subtle things you can do at Butter, like voting after people provide answers, which can replace even a Miro board sometimes, right? But you can create in time as you're creating, or you can create and store in your toolbox, which I'm going to be showing you folks. She's creating a simple survey, right? And you have options like letting the facilitator answering polls, anonymous answers. Folks, for dynamic conversations, a lot of people, they prefer anonymous answers, right? So you can build trust. Start with anonymous questions, and then you can build trust, right? So she just created a survey, is on the tool, and that's it. We have a block, which is the warm-up block, right? So these are the basics. I'm going to give a pause to allow Liz to share a question. Go on, Liz.
Hey, thanks. I was wondering if you can have multiple co-facilitators. Can you have more than one person, or can you only have one?
You can have, I think, I'm not sure if it's a limit, but I think I had sessions with 5 or 6 co-facilitators.
Awesome.
And the magic, Liz, is that you create the room way before the session. So you create the room and you add people that can collaborate with you in the agenda before the session happens, right? So normally you can do that using a Google Docs. But here's the real thing. You're really adding the Mural link. You're really adding the survey, right? So it's very dynamic. Yeah. The conversations are faster for you to decide the content of your session, right?
Yeah.
Virginia Crumcamp.
On co-facilitators, do they need to be a member of your organization?
Not at all. This is a room by the Butter team, and I received it in my Farfetch email. So any email can be invited for a co-facilitator session.
Okay, thank you.
Right? So let's proceed. I want to show you some cool stuff, right? Anna, I want you to show the toolbox before showing more things on the agenda, right? So the agenda, folks, is the time-based view. But the toolbox is where you can add your stuff before the session, right? Let's say that you have that usual Miro board that you always use for a warm-up. It's fine. You just add here, you click on Miro, and you can find in your Miro account all the links, so you can create a new board as well, right? Ana Maria has many, many different boards, and she will just create a new one, right? Imagine that she wants to design a new icebreaker. So you can add in your toolbox. So the moment she saves is available, right? And when she's back on the agenda, go back on the agenda, Anna. If she clicks on the warm-up on tools, it's already there, so she can, when she adds a new tool, the same board is there, so she can just drag and drop for the session, and you have it, right? So that means you can work in parallel, right? Perhaps someone is finishing a Google presentation and something like that. You just add the Google presentation already in your agenda canvas, and people can be working, right? When it's ready, right? So following up on the agenda plan, I want to show you in the next block something that I really like to use, which is a new feature which we call flashcards, right? Sometimes you're running the session and you just need to give people like an information, you need a break or something like that, right? So in the next block, I'm gonna ask Anna to use a flashcard to show you how does it work, right? So flashcards, they have many different types. It's like, I'm trying to find, it's not a Google Docs template, but there is one with copy, with text and image, with video, with GIFs. And so there's 4 or 7 different templates, and there's all interactive as well. So you can have like warm-ups, like either or images, you can have options. So it's quite funny. So she's gonna create one for us, interactive one. And for instance, do you prefer dogs or cats, right? Could be a good right. So, and the flashcard, it's when it's going to be shown during the session, you just tap the button and people will be able to interact as well, right? So it's quite helpful as well when you trying to create some momentum for people to see a question, right? Perhaps the question is going to be on the survey, but you just want to have them a break. You want to give them a heads up about that question, right? Which is something that I did in the warm-up as well, right? So flashcards, it's a quick substitute for the slides. So you can use that freely, right? So there's a lot of stuff here. I'm going to just walk you through the different tool elements which you can use in a session, right? So, Anna, can you open the toolbox for me? Right. So if you click on Add Tool, I think I told you folks about the Google tools. If you add the Google Docs, it's going to be a collaborative Google Docs session, like Sheets and Slides as well, right? Google Drive, I think, is the same. Miro and Muro are the default tools for collaboration. You have the Whiteboard, so you can use Whiteboard for people to sketch during the session, YouTube videos. The Breakout Rooms, which is something that connected to the Alone Together team, right? Anna, can you open the Breakout Rooms so I can show you? So there are two different types of Breakout Rooms. One is groups. So this is kind of split into random groups. So you just click on a button and people will be split. Quite simple. You just have a breakout name, number of participants, and we can also have automatic names like fruits and flowers and stuff like that, right? It will do that automatically, so we'll distribute evenly. So when you have that functionality in the session, you can see, you can set up the minutes as well, and you can even add the tasks. So let's say that you're asking them to do something, right? Like I ask you folks to do the outline. We can be working this in groups and then say, work on the outlines, right? And you can also enable tools. So within the breakout room, you can have a specific assigned tool, which you have already in your toolbox, right? So that's really magic, because a lot of the interaction you're designing when you're planning a session like this, it's about asking people to develop some piece of work and then play it back for you. So you can plan that in your agenda blocks, right? It's quite a simple way of creating that interactivity, right? So we have a few minutes more, and I give you folks the basic. And I want you folks, if you want to see the agenda for this session you're having now and all the details, just raise your hand, because I'm going to put you folks as a facilitator for a few minutes. But my suggestion is actually for you folks to get your outline, open a new browser tab, and let's have it. Let's do it, right? Let's try to create a session here. Let's use the session planner live, and we're going to be here in the room. You can ask for help, and that's the plan. Spend a few minutes, just you folks trying and giving a go in the tool and see how it works, and we can answer questions while you do that. Carolina, go on.
Wanted to raise my hand for the
for the facilitators. Yes, so I'm going to give you right now. So we can rotate. So if you want to not do it, but you want to see how it works, I give Carolina now access, right? Carolina, feel free to mess around. I have everything saved in another room. Don't worry. Create new blocks, move blocks, change the timing, do it as you wish, right? And if you want to work in your outline, and I think that's the best, open a new browser tab so you can keep the conversation here. But in the Butter dashboard, you can just create a room quickly, and you can try it out and use the session planner. And while you do that, me, Anna, and Cheska, we are here to answer any questions you have.
Give me a thumbs up who's open a new tab with their dashboard. Who's in their dashboard right now? Wiggle a finger. Give me a thumbs up. Wiggle your nose. Wiggle something. All right. So we have a couple of people doing that. Curious to hear if there are any questions or doubts or something you would like us to tap more into detail. Everyone's busy with their dashboards. Good.
Yes. There's a lovely guest in the audience today, Stella Vaz, which is my partner in crime in facilitation at Farfetch. She's very shy. Gonna give her a facilitator power so she can see the session.
Come on, Daniel, come on.
You know that. I have to put you on the spot. I love it. It's my sport.
Why, Daniel? Why?
I have a question. So I was thinking that, like, for an introduction session, I would put up a map and have everybody put like a star or a dot or something for where they are, because I know my team's all over the US and UK and Europe. And so what would be the best method to do that? Would that be to like be in a Miro board if we were going to continue using Miro, or would it be easier to use something on Butter that members of the conversation can drop dots and pins on?
We actually can do that with the flashcard, the interactive flashcard with image. I think is the third option. You can upload your image and people will tap and the avatar will show. If you're using a map, will be the avatar. If you're using
I can create one.
Yes, let's
right
do it.
now if you want.
let's talk about our next
Will you show
location.
us?
Yes.
Awesome.
So I can show you. Let's see. Let's do it on the spot, right? So this is something that Cheska is already like super fast. You're taking all my thunder here. You're stealing my thunder, Cheska. Go home. Share your screen. Let's see. Pam. So this is us, right? So say hello. That's us. So this is the session, and now we don't have a map plan for the session, right? But I can quickly access my toolbox as a facilitator and my agenda on my right. Here are all of the tools and everything that we've played around with Daniel in this session, but we do not have a flashcard with this. I'm going to create one now. So I'm coming here, I'm picking a flashcard. I am saying, gonna drop a pin. And excitement. Drop a pin, add a new flashcard, and I want to go to interactive. I would like to pick image and video or text because this is the largest image that we have, and I want it to be interactive because I want people to stamp things on the map. So there I go. I'm to next, choosing an image, upload your own, and I think I have a map. Ta-da! I'm not sure which one I would see better, but let's try with this one. I can resize it a bit here and make sure like the entire map's in. Dragging and dropping, a bit of fine tuning. There we go. Now I can click save and I can be tell us from where you are tuning in from. I save it. And now I can save it in my toolbox, or I can start it now. I'm going to save it in my toolbox so I can keep it for later on. And now I can just do this. Zack, yes, start tool. And now I think my screen share went home and I can now stamp on the map.
Awesome. And Julie is asking the pros and cons, flashcard or whiteboard, right? I think with flashcard, you only have one opportunity to tap, right? With whiteboard, you can sketch on it, you can write, right?
That was the other option that we have, and you can easily also, and let me probably show you that as well. Just a simple whiteboard with a picture. Let me quickly.
And I have the cat example, right?
No, I can do the share your screen,
bring the cats.
confirm, bam. So now we're back here and I can do the same. I can add a simple whiteboard. So I don't even have to go with world map. I don't even have to go with Miro in this case. I can save it. I can open it here. Yes, start tool. And if I would set this in beforehand, you would already see the map. Otherwise, I can just drag and drop it here. So then anyone can pick a color and wiggle and do a drawing and tell us where they are from.
All right.
So these are the two options. It's really up to you which one. I mean, this one, obviously, it can get quite messy, quite easy, but sometimes it's really fun for a check-in.
Maybe just to add as well to that, for the whiteboard, like one of the best examples I've seen is Anna Maria's emotion wheel on the whiteboard, where people can actually draw the weather in their location, add a bit more context on where they're from. So lots of fun things to do on that whiteboard.
Right. So how about you guys are doing? Anyone wants to perhaps give us a screenshot of your planning session or share any comments about your experience using the session planner for the first time, or perhaps a question? We are here for helping.
Hello. I enjoyed the session planner. I did a plan that I used in my last session.
Uh-huh.
And the plan started, the first part of the plan started with a mood check-in, and the second part was about OKR, strategic OKR, and then tactical OKR, and then wrap up about what we did. So this is what was my plan for my last session that I did in.
That was awesome. How does it feel? It was easy? Do you have any struggle?
It was easy. It was enjoyable because I don't have to plan my session before Butter, and I can do it using Butter, and it was great.
Right. So one thing about this is great. You do the first time, and later you can reuse this. So you can duplicate your room with the agenda within. So that's, I think, is the a lot of value. It's when you have recurrent meetings or workshops, you kind of create your own library of tools and stuff, and it gets easier over time. I think is a really great advantage, right? So we're kind of running out of time, and I need to ask you folks a final question before we wrap up. Ana Maria, my partner, will just share the survey with you folks. Go on, Ana Maria.
So do tell us, has anything changed in your confidence level when it comes to using the agenda planner? Is this a smaller fish to fry now that we've had the opportunity to play around with it a bit? Let's see. Cast your votes. All right. Hello. Yes, we're into the 8 and the 9s and the 10s. We're feeling more confident. And I have to tell you, it's all in the practice. Like open it up, play with it, break it, invite your friends to test it out. And you're always free to join the Butter community, where we're always testing new things and playing around with Butter. And sometimes we break it and other times we don't. But it definitely guarantees you are in good hands to learn the tool and a couple of facilitation tricks. And I would love to thank Daniel. This was amazing. Thank you, Daniel, so much. This calls for an applause. And I'm going to do something. I'm going to end on a high note. I'm going to enable the soundboard for everyone in the room. So if you go to React, find the second tab that says soundboard and give it up for Daniel. Go crazy. Yes. Yes.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot, folks, for joining. I hope this session helped you to understand the session plan and experience Butter in firsthand as well, right? I think we have so much to do to make time like this better, and I'm really happy to to be able to contribute with you folks on that mission. Or unsucking meetings is the way I say it.
Unsucking meetings, yes, please. I love the sound of that. We're at the time. Thank you so much for showing up. If you are in the mood to see a mind-blowing breakout room session tomorrow, that's on our agenda for the boot camp. I would love to see some of you there. Otherwise, I'm going to hang out in the room. If you still have questions about the agenda planner, it's open-ended session. Otherwise, I hope to see you around. This was really fun. Thanks a lot, Daniel.